Welcome back to another episode of Bossy, Brilliant, and Badass. I'm Lisa Lindsay, here with my non-toxic co-host, Liz Green.
Yeah, I mean, it's remarkable to me. I know I've commented on this a million times, but how quickly you come up with something right after we do it.
Interview?
Right after we record.
I know.
It's awesome.
I know. It's just like, it's like quick thinking.
Where are they? Like, we should put out like some kind of like contest or something. Okay, what do you guys think?
I know,
Based
right?
on like, what are they going to be talking about?
I know.
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely loved this conversation with Sarah K. Ramsey around just, oh my gosh, we just talked about toxic relationships. We talked about, what else did we talk about?
Being stuck, getting unstuck. She has such great imagery around spaghettis and waffles. And I'm going to leave it like that so that you could probably get a sense of what we're talking about here in terms of spaghettis and waffles and what do they have to do with each other, because one's a breakfast food and one's a dinner food, maybe. But
her analogies
very cool.
Are so helpful when we start kind of concretizing and pulling apart our problems, our tangible, our emotional problems, it's just, I love that as well. And so she's a certified strategic life coach, and she studied under Tony Robbin. She graduated from Brendon Burchard's high performance coaching program. And she's written a couple of books, which her first one actually was a best-selling book, Becoming Toxic Person Proof, Clear the Confusion and Learn to Trust Yourself. And she's writing another book right now. So she talks about that in the interview as well. So let's bring her on.
Sarah, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, it's so exciting to have you here. So, all right. So we're going to talk a little bit about your work, which is helping clients to get unstuck. But we're probably going to end up focusing it in from a sales perspective. We figure let's start broad, right? Because I think we are always stuck in some way. So how do you help people get unstuck?
Well, in my own life, I had a very complicated situation that I call a spaghetti problem. So my dad was a pastor. I worked for the church. My former husband's family worked for the church, and we'd been in that church for 30 years. Okay. So there was just all the community and all those people was so very interwoven, right? So that's why I call it a spaghetti problem. And I know many of your listeners face their own spaghetti problems. And it's like, oh, I can't get unstuck because if I pull one little noodle out,
right, it unravels
in my lap, right? And so, like so many people, I put off some decisions I needed to make. In this case, it was the decision to get a divorce, which meant I was going to lose my job. My dad might lose his job. The community that I loved was literally going to split in two, right? It wasn't an easy decision to make, right?
Yep.
So I off the decision. And but then my hair started falling out. I started gaining weight, losing weight. I couldn't digest my food. And eventually I was driving a car in Charlotte, North Carolina, completely sober, but I blacked out while driving and my friend had to grab the wheel. And my nervous system just shut down from all the stress of it. And I know that's happening to many of your listeners too, because when a problem is that big and that scary, it feels impossible to move forward. It feels impossible to unravel. And so that was really my rock bottom, and helped me develop a method of waffling things down. So waffling a problem down. And when we look at spaghetti, it's messy, it's interwoven, it's sticky, it's smelly, it could fall in our place. We have to cut it up for our kids, right? But waffles are segmented out. There's one little bite. Okay. And if we can take our problems, each noodle, and make one little bite out of it, it doesn't feel so scary. It may still suck, right? It may still be horrible, but when I was looking at my own life, it was like, okay, how am I going to explain my decision to people? How am I going to let go of, this is my dad's life and this is my life, and I'm not responsible for what happens in his career. And now where am I going to work? Where am I going to live? What divorce lawyer am I going to use? Like, those are all different problems to solve. But when you're talking to people on sales calls, you're talking to your clients, you're talking to somebody in customer service who's angry, they're going to give you a spaghetti problem. And you're going to say, hey, how can I help you? And they're going to go blah, 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 and tell you 15 things,
Right.
which
Mhm.
makes it really hard to move forward. And so that is how this method developed and also why it's successful.
Yeah, you know, it's very interesting. My therapist calls it the order of operations. So whenever I do that to her, she'll be like, okay, what's the first thing we need to do? What's the order of operations? And it's just sort of like exactly what you're saying. It's just like taking the one tiny step. And I know, Liz, that this is like a coaching technique as well. It's just like focusing in on the smallest, simplest next thing to help people kind of get to clarity, because often you're right, when we're in our stuck places, is because there's so much going on in our heads and our brains. There's so much we need to think about, and we don't know where to even begin.
Yeah, we don't know where to begin. And so we're just sitting there in that kind of frozen place going, okay, I don't even want to deal with any of this. And just, really, really not even utilizing your time well, because you're just shut down essentially.
Mm-hmm. And if it worked, keep doing it. But it's not working, right? We have people are numbing out on food, alcohol, drugs, TV, sex, whatever, right? Because like in my situation, I could fool my brain. I couldn't fool my nervous system.
Right.
Right.
Right. So I was
Right.
just like,
Mhm.
I'll think about it later. I'll worry about it later. I'll deal with it later,
Right.
and till my
Your
nervous
nervous
system.
system was like, nope, we're going to deal with this now.
Right. And our body tells us, don't you think so, Sarah? Our body,
Absolutely.
especially in your case, big time, but usually our bodies will show up and tell us that, okay, something has to change here.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And I remember my jaw being so I was just so tense. My jaw was just the stress in my body that I remember this one time, like taking, and I've never done this before, but like I remember like I had a pain pill left over from a C-section. And I was in so much pain from literally my jaw and shoulders from stress that I had to take a pain pill for my stomach being cut open to be able to manage that stress.
Right.
Right. And
Yep.
that still
Right.
wasn't enough of a wake up call. I had to wait until I almost killed my friend. Right. I mean, and
Yeah.
so many amazing women. I certainly don't think I'm dumb or stupid or, those types of things. It's this weird thing about our humanity that it's just easier to see other people's problems and to ignore our own.
Right.
Absolutely. So yeah, so starting with one spaghetti strand at a time.
Absolutely. And the way this can work is if you can literally journal and just kind of write out, in my case, well, I'll do an entrepreneur problem to solve. Okay. So it's like, I really need to hire somebody else, but that extra income I can use for my kids, or I could hire this PR person I've been thinking about, but I know that my spouse is really mad at me because I'm always staying up late because I'm the only one working and I'm a solopreneur and I need to like expand. Okay, so that's like a spaghetti problem, right?
Yep.
So it's really hard to kind of figure out what this person is really saying or what they need to do. And I was in a community for executive female leadership, right? So in corporate. And this one lady, she kept saying clarity is kind.
Mhm.
And she said it in regards to how she communicates with her employees. But as a coach, I was like, oh, man, we talk about self-love. We talk about, getting a massage or doing the hard work and going to therapy, but we don't think about that gift of clarity as one of the
Mhm.
kindest things we can do for ourselves.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yes,
Yep.
I agree.
Absolutely. And that's one of the 8 C words that's in the internal family systems model is clarity. It's just of vital importance to have room for that and have that clarity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when you think about it, the first step is figuring out where you want to go, right?
Mhm.
And then we have the lovely F word. And no, not the fun F word, the bad F word, right? We have fear that
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
should, right? And
Mhm.
that's kind of what's fascinating. Talking about it from a sales perspective, right? our first job is to get our prospect super clear about what
Mhm.
problem they're trying to solve. And when I'm on the phone with someone, I say, look, I have no agenda. I'm going to ask you some questions. And if what you're currently doing is working, you should keep doing it. If what you're currently doing isn't working, we're going to see if you're interested in doing something else.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
And whether, and
As
you know
simple
what,
as
it's
that.
so, that's so interesting because that is actually a sales technique I use when coaching, right? It's sort of like, okay, we're going to find out where you are right now, where you want to be, what's stopping you from getting there. And if I can help you, great. If not, I'll figure out how we can get you some help in another place, right? But I think sometimes what I find on those calls, it's like walking through those processes of those two questions, three questions of where are you today? Where do you want to be? And like, what's stopping you? What might be in the way of you getting there, and having them talk through that always gets to the end of, okay, I'm going to buy, right? Because you get it, you understand it. And I think that it's really not me understanding it, is that they now understand it.
Right.
What do you think?
Absolutely. And high quality caring sales techniques and good coaching techniques are so similar, right? I
Overlap.
mean,
Yep.
yeah, you're having to sell them on a new life, sell them on hope, sell them on pushing past fear, sell them on themselves. And you can't do that without clarity. Right. And how many
Mm-hmm.
sales calls do you get on and they are spaghetti thinking. They're dumping their spaghetti thinking on you. Right. Well, I mean, maybe I should do something, but my dad doesn't even want me to be an entrepreneur. He doesn't even understand what I'm doing. And my best friend said I was stupid because she just can't figure out why I even need a babysitter, because I mean, I'm just at
Mm-hmm.
home, so I'm probably not even working. Right. I mean, these things have nothing to do
With the
with
actual problem. Yep.
the actual problem you're trying to solve,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so that's always my kind of first question is what problem you're trying to solve. And I did spaghetti and waffle out my own life, but when I was getting on sales calls, what I call the magic question of what problem are you trying to solve, really came from a sales process, because these women were getting on the phone with me and just like spilling their guts, and like
Mm-hmm.
they thought their job, what they were supposed to do, is get on the phone with me and complain,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
They thought that was what they were supposed to be doing. And I was like, this isn't what you're supposed to be doing. But how do I stop you without coming across as uncaring,
Right.
or, how do I redirect the ship?
Yeah, yeah. And that's always tough, right? And particularly when somebody is venting, because they don't have that clarity. And sometimes you think if you're just talking it out, you're talking it out, that'll help you get to the place of clearness. And not only that, I think sometimes when they're venting out, the intention is to help me to understand what the problem is, right? Like me, the person that they're talking to understand the problem is. And if you're doing it from a coaching perspective, you don't really need to understand the problem. And I often find
Right.
from a consulting place as well, I don't really need to understand the details. We'll get to the details because the details are going to matter sometimes in a consulting environment, which is what I do. But often it's sort of like, yeah, I can tell you what the big problem is and the little problem is, and like all the problems. But I know in order that if from a consulting perspective, if I'm going to go sell you on the big problem, you're not going to really buy from me. So I need to solve your small problem first. Right? Or tell you, okay, we're going to help you solve this, or we're going to help you solve these things. Right? And that's a way to kind of get them immediately moving from where they are. Like you said, I like this analogy of the spaghetti, because when you look at it, you visualize it, it's just all there in a blob. Right?
Mhm.
And in the blob, right? My husband is in consulting. So within the blob, you have emotional problems to solve and practical problems to solve.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And that is one of the first steps in clarity that I will separate those for people. And just the saying it. Okay. How your dad feels about you running a business, and who is going to watch your kids for that major event you have on Tuesday. not the same problem to solve. One is an emotional problem to solve that's internal. One is a practical problem to solve. And like in consulting and whatnot, it's interesting because I guess anytime in sales, there's emotional problems to solve that are not being talked about,
Mhm. Well,
right?
yeah, I mean, but that's why, any marketing guru, and you could go listen to any one of our marketing things, they will always tell you, you always want to talk about the practical benefits, that like the tangible benefits, and then what are the emotional benefits. So I'm a human resources consultant, right? And the one thing I'm always selling is peace of mind. Always, without a doubt, always selling peace of mind, right? Because it's the law and I don't know, and I don't know what I don't know. So am I doing it right? And it's sort of like, okay, I can give it to you. Great. I'm no longer worried, or I'm relaxed, and that's always the undertone. So I might not ever like overtly say, okay, peace of mind, but I'll say, don't worry, I got you, right? Or something like that. And that will immediately sort of defray the worry, where I'm not immediately out saying, okay, I'm going to please buy some peace of mind from me. Right.
Right, exactly. And I like what you said too there, Sarah, is just almost kind of like also reflecting back, like this polarity that people have inside, right? All the different sort of issues. Well, this is this, and this is this, and this is it. And it's really just ping-ponging back and forth. And when they're hearing, say, from you, even reflecting back, it gives them clarity. Okay, there's that, there's that, there's that. Okay, now we can hone into what we really need to kind of coach or fix.
And if you can draw out that map for them, or draw out that waffle square, right? So okay, so what I'm hearing from you is, it sounds like the legal problem you're trying to solve is making sure you're comfortable with all those laws, and the emotional problem you're trying to solve is being able to feel secure in your job, that you're checking off all the boxes, and the practical problem you're trying to solve is making sure you know what you don't know, right? So
Mhm.
even
Yeah.
like that language of, like, I think about it as sticky notes, like, sticking a sticky
Mhm.
note on each one of those, and just say, okay, this is the
Mhm.
waffle square. This is the legal problem. This is the emotional problem. And this is the practical problem. And just
Mhm.
even, and I love using the language. I call it the magic question about what problem you're trying to solve, because it really does get people out of venting. When there's a
Mhm.
problem, when you use the language, here's the problem to solve. There's hope in solving that problem. There's direction in solving that problem. And there's already a map. And
Mhm.
it gets you a different version of listener, right? Because they go, oh, rather than I'm frustrated, they
Mhm.
take on the identity of problem solver, which is already the lovely A word that we all love, action
Mhm.
oriented, right?
Yep.
Problem solvers are action oriented. They're not just waiting for a magic fairy to come,
Like
wait,
sprinkle fairy dust on the problem and it'll be magically solved. Although some of us wait for that, but
it's
even
not
though
a
we
good.
know it's impractical. Yeah, exactly.
That's when I did it, and it literally nearly killed me. Remember
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
Right.
I have great
Right.
empathy to people who want that approach to work. I still wish that approach would work, right? Sometimes
We all
when
do, because sometimes
yeah,
we don't want to do the hard thing. So yeah.
absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah. So I'd like that. So once we've gotten in, right? So like as an entrepreneur, I think one of the things I'm hearing is about really listening as well. So you can listen past the dump, right? And start to say, well, there's this thread, there's this thread. So how do you sort of help people to become better listeners overall?
Mhm. It's very easy. Like you'll already see it differently. When I explain this concept, people immediately, it's a little bit like rose-colored glasses. Like once you see it, and you can't unsee it.
Hmm.
I
Right.
think the most critical piece of this is the asking permission to unravel someone else's problems,
Right.
Hmm.
right? Rather than saying, well, here's what you should do. You've got all these
Oh
Hmm.
yeah,
problems.
that never works, right?
Nope.
Kind, right? When we're talking about clarity is kind, permission is kind, boundaries are kind, right?
Yeah.
And even to say, in my next book, Problem Solved: Simple Habits for Complex Decisions, each chapter is outlined in influencing yourself and influencing others.
Hmm.
And it will be easier to unravel other people's problems than your own, right?
Always.
So when we think about like a building block or a muscle to build or learning a new musical instrument or learning a new language, right? It's going to be, there's steps, order of operations, right?
Mhm.
And so the order of operation first is you will see this spaghetti dump and you'll go, oh, okay, I just heard 3 problems.
Mhm.
And when you think about it as a puzzle, okay,
Mhm.
'cause our brains are really good at procrastination, right? So as
Mhm.
soon as you get clarity, it's going to be like, yeah, but which problem to solve do I have to start with? You know, and it's like,
Mhm.
nah, girl, no, 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 we're not playing
Right.
that again, right? It's like a puzzle. If you start with the right corner or the left corner or the dog's
It'll all
face,
fill it in. Mhm.
it doesn't matter, right? It matters that you start. And so the easiest place to start in this process will be to see other people's problems and unravel them. But in that kindness and clarity, we want to say, hey, it it feels like I'm hearing you talk about 3 problems here. Can I tell you what I'm hearing? Like
Mhm.
that is the
Yeah.
first step. I want to scream to the rooftops, whether it's on the phone or, you know, with an employee at work or your kids or your spouse or whatever, your best friend, to say, hey, I feel like I'm hearing you talk about 3 main points here. Can I tell you what I'm hearing?
Mhm.
Mhm.
Right.
Mhm.
So that instantly when I'm always interested in finding people who have ears willing to hear.
Right.
Okay.
Mhm. Yep.
And there are some people who have no interest in ever growing ears,
Mm.
ever,
Mhm. Mhm.
right?
They don't want to
These
listen to you. Yep.
these are not our favorite people. We get frustrated with these people, right? It's like the aunt who keeps ruining family vacation for everyone, or that, you know, that one client who it's like, man, I gave you every tool to be successful. And they're like, but I don't want to be successful. I want to have someone to blame for not being successful, right?
Yep.
So some people just don't have ears, right? But when you know, okay, let's say this is an employee, okay,
Mhm.
and they've come and spaghetti dumped at you for the 6th time, and you're saying, "Hey, I'm hearing several different problems. May I break them up for you? Or may I give you back some info on what I'm hearing you say?"
Mhm.
They're going to really feel bad to say, "No, I don't want to hear what you say." Right? No
Mhm.
one's going to say that, but
Most
you're
people will, like most people, 95% will say, all right, what do you hear?
Well, absolutely. And if they know that's what you're going to do, there's a crazy statistic from Stanford that said listening to complaining for 30 minutes a day shrinks our brain.
What?
Really?
30 minutes a day. Okay.
Is that
Raise your
our
hand.
own complaining or someone else's or
Both.
both?
Both. Okay. I mean, raise your
Wow.
hand, ladies. We are in coaching, we are in consulting, we are in this world. Like listening to people complain is part of the gig. I mean, poor little therapists out there, they're going to be like walking away with like no prefrontal cortex at all because they're just listening to these people all the time. The little customer complaint service center.
I know. I
Um,
was thinking about customer service people. I was like, "Oof."
Ooh.
What size
right,
are your brains?
right, and look it up. Don't take my word for it. It really is crucial for our own mental health to have that flip for people to get them into that identity of action taking problem solver rather
Mhm.
than chronic complainer. And
Mhm.
so if you start this process and it's your best friend, you know, and it's the 7th or 8th time, and you've said, okay, may I tell you some feedback on what I'm hearing, and waffle out
Mhm.
their problem for them, eventually they're going to start feeling bad that they're coming to you complaining about the same things over and over again. Right.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I agree. I agree. I
Yeah, and
agree.
there's also nothing better than, sorry to interrupt you, Lisa, is to kind of hear feedback from somebody else. If someone says, you know what, Liz, what I'm really hearing, like if I may, is I'm hearing this, I'm hearing this, I'm hearing this. Does that sound right? Then for me, I'll say, yeah. And it offers me that clarity as well. Somebody kind of naming it, and then it kind of pulls me out of that
Loop.
spaghetti spin thing into, oh, okay, well, there's this. That feels a lot better than there's like a gazillion things and I'm caught up in the tornado.
Mhm, mhm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And again, clarity is kind, right? And especially if you're giving people their as close to their exact words back to them.
I was just going to ask you about
Yeah.
that, because that's, again, another coaching
Yes.
technique that we learn, right? Which is to use people's words. And I actually really find, particularly whenever I'm having coaching or sales conversations, when I use their words, they really feel like I understand them a lot better than,
Yeah.
I mean, and I'm just sort of like, I just used your own words.
Right. They feel
That's
heard
it.
and seen, because so
Mhm.
often when people are in that spin and complaining, they really want to be heard and seen. And if they're used to people always coming back at them with, you shouldn't do that. Like, why don't you do this? And then people don't feel seen and heard around that
No.
ever.
Mm-mm. Mm-mm. Mm-mm.
Yeah, their ears shut down, right? So this is a really sneaky way to get them to move the needle in the kindest way I can come up with it, right? Because it's like, okay, this is what I'm hearing. Here are your words back to you in 3 different boxes rather than one big jumble. Right.
Yep.
Like that's the kindness, but it is interesting because that is the first step. And then you have to get the fear step, right?
Mhm.
Because quite often people are remaining in the jumble because then they can tell themselves they don't know what to do.
Right. And you keep kind of going, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. And the truth is, I think we have a lot of empathy for not knowing what to do, because we've all been there, right?
Mhm.
So it's sort of like, it feels safe in a place to like, I don't know what to do.
That's a safe
And
place.
right, like, I don't know
Staying
what
in
to
that
do is
spin feels safe. You
Right.
don't have
Until
to take any
you
action.
black out while driving. Right? Which is why I'm so passionate about this, right? Until you black out while driving, until your skin completely breaks out, until your hair falls out, until you can't digest your food, until your husband walks out on you, until your business falls apart, right? Like, it feels safe, but it's not.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
No, it's
Yeah.
not safe at all.
Yeah. And whew, girl. Okay. Yes.
So passionate about this subject.
Well, it's sort of like, when you think about it, and it's interesting, right? Because I know these things, Liz, if I could speak for you, I know she knows these things. We know these things, but it's also very interesting to kind of like hear it again, right?
Yeah.
Hear it again to kind of go, yep, because now I'm applying it to recent situations, recent conversations, and going, yep, that's the thing, right? It feels safe. And I understand that it feels safe for you until like you said, you black out while driving, and then you realize not safe at all.
Mhm.
All right. So
Yeah.
we talked about, go ahead, Sarah.
I was writing the book Problem Solved. Something terrible happens when you write books. You apparently your pants shrink. I don't know what it is, but apparently, and no one ever tells you when you write a book how unhealthy it is, right? Like you're sitting, you're editing, like it's terrible for your health in every way. And so I hired a nutrition coach to kind of get me back in gear before the holiday season, because last September, I was at like my heaviest weight going into Christmas and all these vacations. I go, whoa, okay, this is gonna be a problem, right? And she said something so amazing, so earth-shattering. She said I should eat less bread and more vegetables. And I paid her a lot of money to tell me that, right? And I mean, the nutrition industry is I think it's a $254 billion industry at this
Wow.
point. Nutrition and weight loss and that kind of thing. And everyone is basically saying the same thing. And because as I've taught this concept, people are like, this seems deceptively easy. And I was like, it is easy, right?
Mhm.
But our brains will work so hard to keep us stuck, keep us safe. Podcast listeners, I'm doing air quotes, safe in the in that stuckness, because it allows us to feel good about procrastinating.
Yes.
Yes. Oh my God.
Absolutely. Yep.
100%. 100%. Because I think sometimes taking action is the hardest thing, right? And
It is.
this is another theme that we've kind of come up against as we've done this show over the last couple of years, is sort of like knowing, right? So we always give knowledge. That's one thing we do on this show. But it's sort of like, we always like to get people into how, right? Like how, because we want to see you take action. But we know there's this knowing doing gap. Because all of us know, like you just said, eat less bread and more vegetables. I mean, how many of us out here know that? Like,
Every-
that. It's not
Everybody
even
knows that. Everybody knows that.
like, it's not even, I'm just like, I paid you a ton of money to tell me to do that. And I know that, lady. Right. So I think sometimes it's not even telling us what we know, it's helping us get into action. Right. That's what we're really paying for. It's like, how do we get into action? So, Sarah, how do we get into action?
So that's where, to me, the separating out the emotional problems and the practical problems are so crucial. So
Yes.
my coaching clients, they're spaghetti dumping onto a paragraph, like, or somebody can do it for them. It really is easier if there's two people, and it's like, okay, I'm going to spaghetti dump this problem. Okay. And then basically each sentence almost ends up being a different waffle square, typically. Okay. So, each sentence is a different waffle square. And then you want to separate the emotional problems to solve, such as how my dad feels about me being an entrepreneur, quitting my legal career, and, how the practical steps of,
Getting a babysitter.
babysitter, right? And when we see those as two of the same problem, it really blocks us from moving forward. So using a highlighter and highlighting emotional problems, underlining practical problems. And then I like to think about emotional problems to solve as elephants. Okay. Now, Lisa and Liz, would you rather be in front of an elephant leading it or behind an elephant getting pooped on?
Oh, Jesus. Sarah, I don't think there's a good place to be in. Like, no, I want to be on top of the elephant driving it.
Okay, but on top of the elephant driving it. I'll go with that one. I'll go on that one. Literally, okay. This is the most traumatic moment of my childhood. Y'all know America's Funniest Home Videos?
Yes.
I was walking by a TV on America's Funniest Home Videos, and I see this zookeeper behind an elephant, and the elephant sits on his head. And he almost dies. And I remember, as I was like a 9-year-old kid, you can Google it, like elephant sitting on someone's head. Give it a Google. And I was like, that would be the worst way to die of all time. Like, I remember thinking, oh my gosh, it was so, like, as a kid, like, that is so horrible. And so there was always this imagery of like all the danger of being behind the elephant. It can sit on your head, its tail can smack you. And when we think about our emotional problems to solve as an elephant, the more we're feeding those, right, the bigger they are going to grow and the harder they're going to be to manage. And I love the conversation around emotional intelligence. I love that we're more in touch with our feelings. It's working until it's not. And sometimes people are using, well, it's just my comfort zone. Yeah, I'm just afraid. Yeah, I have a limiting belief. And it's like, Elizabeth Gilbert, in her book, Big Magic, she said, I eventually got bored with my own fear. Like, fear is not interesting.
No.
Everybody's afraid.
I agree.
Right. And so, but we make our fear very, very interesting. And so much of, if we get the wrong type of therapist or the wrong friend or it's just like, they will just pet your elephant of fear, right? Oh yeah. Oh, I'm so sorry. Yeah, I understand. I have a comfort zone too. And then we're getting smacked. We're getting pooped on. We're not moving forward. And then 13 things mentally strong women don't do. Amy Morin had a quote that stopped my world. And I love women. I work with women. I am women, but she said, men solve their problems and women try to solve their emotions.
Oh, Amy.
Right?
Yes. Right? Amy's telling us all.
Amy's telling us all, right? And I wish that had been like this whole chapter in her book. I swear to you, it's just like this one little line that if you were like not paying attention, you could miss it. And I was just like, oh, Amy, whoa, here we go, girl. And
right, like, say more. And
so with my clients, I said, you're allowed to solve your emotional problems and practical problems, but you can't use your emotional problems as like a T shape, right? Like public speaking. Okay, I will do that speaking event when I'm not scared.
Yeah.
And you use that T shape to block your emotions. You're behind your emotions. You're behind that emotional elephant, just feeding. So with my clients, I'm like, okay, I have no problem with you trying to address the emotions, but I want you to solve them side by side, not use the fact that you have emotions surrounding this as an excuse to move forward. Okay. And I use,
So you recommend, so you recommend side by side versus one before the other. And here's, let me tell you what I'm thinking and why I asked that question in that way. Because let's use the example of, I have this big event on Tuesday and I need a babysitter, but my dad is worried about me being an entrepreneur, right? So those are two, that's the example we've been using. So to me, one of the things I would recommend is like, okay, how about we solve the Tuesday problem? Because one, that's coming soon. And the emotional problem is a little bigger and will take more work and more time. But then if we solve, we start the conversation of going to look for a babysitter and hiring a babysitter, right? And that is now solved. To me, that gives us confidence and gives us energy to now sort of move to do the next thing. Because I think motion begets motion, right? So you just do the one thing. And sometimes the practical problems are so easy to solve. Like they don't, you kind of get where I'm coming from. They're like so easy. And like, once you do that and it's not wrapped up and tied up with the whole, my dad doesn't think I should be an entrepreneur thing, and it's separated in that way, then it becomes easier to deal with. You get where I'm going there, Sarah?
I get what you're saying. And I mean, most emotional problems don't really have solutions.
Yeah.
Right. And so if your business is failing because you're blocking yourself and not taking action because of the stuff with your dad's never going to be proud of you. Now he's going to say, yeah, you had a failing business, and you're going to be failing and thinking, oh, not that you should have a business structure based on your dad. But if your business is going well and you feel confident and it's growing and growing, your dad's opinion of you is not going to be as powerful as if your business is failing.
Yeah. Right. 100%, because you're going to be thinking that he's right if it's failing or if it's not going well. And that's going to make the emotional problem worse and probably kind of spiral you into failing.
The practical problems to solve are all, don't feed the elephants. Don't feed the elephants. I mean, feed real elephants. Don't feed the emotional elephants. That 90% of the time, they're just blocking you and smacking you in the face. They're not real. It's like public speaking, right? Okay, I'll give that presentation when I feel good about public speaking. No, just go to Toastmasters. Figure out what you're going to say. One, what are you going to say? How are you going to say it? What's your anxiety plan leading up to that, right? Those are some practical problems to solve. But if you don't, I'll start a business when I'm not scared. I'll hire someone new when I'm not scared. Like, you're never going to get there.
Right. 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 And I mean, yeah, right. I know I keep saying that, but it's like, yes, it's like clicking. Yeah, you're never going to not be scared. The emotions are always going to be there until you start to solve.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Good old Amy. She had something good to say.
I'm telling you, man. I'm telling you, that's so crazy. I mean, did she say more about that? Like that difference?
No,
because I think, oh my God, Amy.
It's not a whole chapter. And maybe she was thinking she didn't want to be insulting to women or whatever. But I mean, I hate to say, like, I read that a couple of years ago, and then I listened to Big Magic on audiobook recently. And, Elizabeth Gilbert saying she used to be afraid all the time. And she realized her fear was uninteresting. And I was just like, man, and that's a very conversational piece with my clients. I'll say, look, we have, 30 minutes. I can either be a good listener or help you become a good problem solver. Which one do you want? Right. And there's a therapist on every, and I'm not against therapy. Please, I don't want your listeners to hear that, but there are people you can pay on every corner who will take your money for the next 10 years and listen to you talk about your emotions.
Yep. If that's what you want.
If that's what you want, you should use your money with them. I can actually help you solve a problem, right? That's what we want to do. I can help you waffle things down. I can help you take action. I can help you separate the emotional and practical problems to solve. That's what you should use me for, right? Most coaches, that's what we want to be used for, is to move that needle.
Yeah, get you into action, which is where I started. It's like, how do we get into action? It's like separate the problem and solve one. And you're saying
that's why I love coaching so much in addition to therapy, because as you say, with therapy, I mean, I come from a different kind of school with therapy. There's certain, I mean, that's a whole other conversation, but I love being able, what you're saying here is being able to kind of separate them and, you know, and you help people get into action. And that's why coaching is so powerful. I wish I had known about coaching when I first started my first business, because it works. It is about putting the emotional over here and having maybe another member of your support team help you with that, and having a coach help you with the action stuff and just stepping into the action and having, you know, having, like you were saying, Lisa, earlier, some concrete wins so you can start building on those.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for saying it that way, because that's kind of what I was meaning when I said sometimes the practical stuff is so easy that it really just kind of spurs you and it gets that ball rolling. Think a snowball coming down the hill, right? Like just that tiny one. And then all of a sudden it's like, it's a big movement that could crush buildings and people because of that small little thing that we started with. So that's so excellent, Sarah. That's so excellent. So all right, just kind of time out. Is there anything, I'm going to ask you a big takeaway question at the end here, but I'm just curious if there anything around this that we should probably talk about before we get to a takeaway.
Something that might be helpful in like a pricing objective thing is like something I call butt mouth, right? So there's that Einstein is credited having this quote of like, negative people, there's a problem for every solution. And I call it butt mouth, you know, and when you see people who are really engaged in staying stuck, you know, addressing butt mouth, and in a sales perspective, you can even like slip that in before and like say, oh yeah, this one person, she's still stuck now because she had butt mouth, you know, and so every solution that has a butt, like preemptively.
Do you mind if I just ask you a question so it's kind of teed up, and can you say that again? Okay. All right. So I remember when we were talking in our pre-chat, you mentioned butt mouth. Can you tell me what that is?
Well, I will say, first of all, the butts have made a comeback, you know, I mean, used to, now it's like, I do a lot of work to have a butt, ladies. I could have that, like, you know, that the flat back club. That's hard to say 5 times fast. Yeah. Flat back. I can't even say it. Yes. You guys know. And, you know, I mean, there's one of the most popular surgeries is like getting like butt injections and this kind of stuff. Like, we love our booties these days, you know, but you also have a real epidemic of butt mouth. Okay. So as much as we love our butts, butts can be really dangerous when we're trying to move forward into action, when, you know, there's something we need to do. And we say, well, I mean, yeah, I mean, I would get that loan out and start a business, but I mean, yeah, I would hire a new employee, but I mean, I would put myself on camera, but right. And it's just something, again, something very easy. I told you with the spaghetti waffle thing, it's kind of, once you put a label on it, you see it, right? You can't not see it good. And so this is something I definitely wanted to interject with your ladies, and the idea of butt mouth. And the people don't like directly being told they're wrong or something they're doing right. No one that. But on a sales call, if you have or you think they might be a butt mouth, or a coaching client that might be a butt mouth, it's a good illustration because it can be funny, it can be light, right? Like, you know, as I'm talking about the butts, everybody's laughing, you know, little Sir Mix-a-Lot, I like big butts, you know, and you can really point out people who are successful and people who aren't successful. And really, you know, I used to have this client and she just had everything, or maybe this lady a potential client who just had everything outlined for her. She could have been so successful, and instead she just, you know,
did everything away.
Butts, right? And just everything, you a suggestion, she would say she had, you know, have butts, and that really sets the tone for objectives, you know, at the end, when people but especially if you can get them to agree, like, do you know anybody with butt mouth, you know, and they're gonna know.
And it negates everything that's said before that.
Well, beyond that, I mean, that's right, Liz. And I will tell you, just even taking it out of professional place and going into a personal place, I tend to stop talking to people because, you can't really coach your personal people. You got to be like very, but if you come to me and it's a whole bunch of butts in a very personal conversation, you and I are, I'm just, okay. Okay.
Yes.
I'm
Yeah.
done. I'm done.
Yeah. I had a client once who everything. Yeah. But, okay, well, then what do you want to, how do you think is the best way to talk with us? Da 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 da. Oh, and I'll repeat it back. So you're saying that, yeah, but even
Even to their own solution, right?
right.
Yeah.
So it's just sometimes one of those, it's like a chronic, but, and those people are really tough to some people are uncoachable. The butt mouth people, I think, are uncoachable.
Well, Sarah, I liked how you said it, right? That like every solution has a problem or something like that. Like, but it's just.
Yeah, he said, watch out for negative. And it's not, I don't think Einstein really said it. If you look on the internet, there's a lot of things people said Einstein said that he didn't really, but if you Google this, you're going to see that Einstein said it. We don't know. But he said that negative people have a problem for every solution.
Yeah. 100%, 100%. And if that's your approach to life, that I agree with you, Liz, they're uncoachable and it becomes very, very difficult. And the work to do to get them around or from that butt place into, again, action. I mean, do you even bother, Sarah? I mean, I don't want to say that we should give up on people because as coaches, we're here to help people, right? So I don't want to ever say that we'll give up on you, but I'm just curious as to how you overcome butt mouth.
If that was someone who had already agreed, we were already in a coaching contract, right? So they had already agreed. I would say, hey, as your coach, do you want me to tell you what you want to hear, or do you want me to tell you from what I'm seeing that you need to hear?
You need to hear.
I would go back to the permission thing, right? I'm really big on, hey, do you want me to listen to your problems or do you want me to help you solve them? Hey, I have this strategy. Are you okay with me waffling down your problem? I always get that buy-in first.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And when I say, do you want me to hear, do you want me to say what I think you need to hear and say, you got a big case of butt mouth. Everything I say, you said what?
Yeah.
I said, how's it going for you? Has it gotten you where you wanted to go? Because what it sounds like is it's keeping you stuck. And I know that stuckness feels safe in your brain. And then I would go into where our brains are really good at doing a lot of things, but it wants to conserve energy. It's change is scary. And I would make it biology's fault, not their fault.
Yeah.
Possible. And try to ease that in and make it funny. I mean, usually at that point I could say, you need to are you been listening to Sir Mix a lot? You like big butts all the time? Because all I'm hearing from you is butts, right? But I talk about not bringing the hammer. And this is absolutely crazy story. My dad sang this song as a child and it said, Mama, grab the hammer. There's a fly on baby's head. And I have no idea why he sang that song. It was a joke, but it's really weird now. Like, it's really weird going.
Yeah, you're gonna smash the baby's head in? Like what?
I don't know. It's like an old moonshine song. I don't know what it was, but I use that point in that illustration to say that there's a fly on the baby's head. You do not bring the hammer. Right.
That's not the solution.
In regards to talking to people, to getting them to move, to it's like, let's go through every tool in the toolbox before we bring in the hammer. So very jokey things like, oh, have you been listening to Sir Mix a lot? And they're like,
no, humor is my way too. I'm good for humor. I find that humor solves a lot of problems because there's a lot of truth in humor. So, and then sometimes they'll be like, yeah, I'm not joking. which is yeah. That's excellent. That's excellent. Sarah, thank you so much. That's been great. So before we let you go, because we've been chatting for a long time, which has been great. What is one takeaway you would want our listeners to have from this conversation?
Ask yourself what problem you're trying to solve. That is what I call the magic question. When you're trying to figure out spaghetti waffle action, what problem are you trying to solve? And it is a magic question because you can ask it with my husband. When we have a big decision to make about kids, I'm like, okay, so the problem I'm trying to solve is my daughter's super athletic, but she wants to play a new travel ball sport team every year. So we did travel softball, travel competitive cheer. Now she's talking about travel soccer, which is incredibly like so much on our family, right? And so, but it's like, okay, what problem are you trying to solve? Well, she needs to be active and she needs to find, be able to get good at things, and so, but what other problem we're trying to solve? We don't want a brand new sport every year to completely sabotage her brother's schedule, our schedule, right? And so that language, oh my gosh, the communication of it in being able to speak to a business partner, being able to speak to your regular partners, being able to speak to your friends, and then also, when someone is in that spin cycle of spaghetti, say, well, what problem are you trying to solve? And to slow down the conversation. What problem are you trying to solve? And it instantly puts them in the seat of self-responsibility in a really healthy, engaging, kind way, because you're saying, you're not saying it, but you are like, I believe that you're a problem solver. I believe that you can solve this problem. And so all we're looking for is clarity. And I literally call it the magic question, because even on my enrollment calls, oh my gosh, they would just go on and on and on. And I was like, I really want to help you, but I don't want to interrupt you. I don't want you to think I don't care. And that was what like did it in, And so now I'll say, hey, give me a 2-minute timeline on your background. And then we're going to spend the bulk of our time talking about what problems you're looking to solve. And as soon as they talk, then I'll say, okay, so what problem are you looking to solve? And it instantly just puts a different hat and spin on someone who's very upset about a situation, and just really starts to set that bullseye for them.
Love it.
Fantastic.
That's excellent. Thank you so much, Sarah. So many golden nuggets. I love it. So where can people find you?
They can go to sarahkramsey.com. And one of the problems that we didn't talk about is there's a around the house method, which I've done a lot of work in complex people and toxic personalities, which is where I had to get really good at solving difficult problems from that background. And there's a giveaway on my website about something I call around the house. So when you're faced with a problem to solve that feels like there's someone blocking you, an obstacle blocking you, how do we get around that problem to get still clear about what we want, and but without, causing ourselves more problems. So that would be a great resource for them. And they should also check out my Toxic Person Proof podcast.
Fabulous.
Awesome. Love it. Well, thank you so much for being with us. And thank you so much for being our badass of the week.
Yeah, thank you so much.